I'm Autumn Brown. I'm like, who am I? A queer science fiction writer, a mother of dragons, a theologian, a writer, a facilitator, living in Minneapolis, about to go to Hawaii.
Yeah. I major in Marie Brown. I major in Marie Brown.
I major in Marie Brown.
And I am literally doing nothing. And
for 6 months.
For 6 months. That's what I'm in the middle of doing right now. So that's who I am too. I'm nobody and nothing. It's dreamy.
A girl is nobody.
A girl is no one. And this is our outro for season 4, which also, outro for season 3.
Yes, teen up season 4.
Teen up season 4, because we are doing that. And also outro for the entire decade of 2010 to 2020.
That's right.
And 2019 to 2020. So
it was so funny earlier today to be explaining the fact that it was the end of a decade to the kids and explaining to Siobhan that she was born at the beginning of this decade.
Exactly.
And that, like, now we were at the end of it.
Yeah.
And
the turn of the decade.
And I was like, we're about to enter the 3rd decade of this century. And she was like, what is a century? And I was like, exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and I love that I once again got to show that I always say 19th century when I mean 20th.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we talk about it is confusing because time is a construct.
So what we wanted to do is come to y'all briefly and just say some of our things that we feel proud about that have happened in this past decade and happened in this past year. And then what are some of the things we're looking forward to for 2020 and for the next decade. And let you know what the show is going to look like during my sabbatical and feel like it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, we've got some really exciting stuff planned.
Yeah.
So I would love to pose this question to you first.
Cool.
First, what do you feel proud of this last year?
Yeah.
Which included so many things to feel proud of.
Yeah, that's pretty
and
good.
Also, what do you feel proud of for this last decade?
It's also tied together, in a very direct way. I can see the way this decade swelled up into what manifested this year. In 2010,
you moved to Detroit.
I moved to Detroit.
That's so intense to think about.
That, so
that was 2010, the social forum.
2009. It was the fall
for the 2010 social forum.
2010 social forum.
Wow.
And so it was I did the social forum, and I finished. Basically, I wrapped up the work that I'd done for the social forum and for the Ruckus Society that same summer because I thought it was cool to have 2 jobs at once for a year.
Yeah.
And then
it sounds so you.
And so me, and especially given this year. And then I really set off on an adventure of learning what does it look like to really work for myself, to self-direct and to consult and to facilitate and mediate. And then I was like, wait, I need a break. Running all that stuff and doing and learning all that stuff, I needed a sabbatical back then. So in 2012, I took a sabbatical and really, I think Emergent Strategy really solidified during that time that it was oh, this is an actual thing.
That's right.
And I came out of that, did the work of moving that book out into the world. Octavia's Brood came out into the world, and pleasure activism came out into the world. So in my arc of the decade, it's been about moving these 3 big ideas one at a time out into the world in partnership in different ways with different people. And I think I've learned so much about how do you move an idea from one mind to many, and how do you gather an idea from many minds into one place. So that feels like the kind of larger work, and I'm really proud of the decade I've been involved in. And I've been doing this gratitude practice to close out the year, and it's been really fun to be yeah, what have I done this decade? And it's I'm really grateful for all the practices I've been in this decade. I really picked up yoga, I picked up tarot, I picked up meditation. I really cemented my writing practice.
Yeah,
this is not a sidebar part of my life, but this is actually a centerpiece of how I am.
And you really turned and started identifying as a writer during this decade.
Exactly. Like I was like, hold up, y'all. You know, this is truly what my heart desires. And I can think of many pivot points during the decade when I turned to someone and was like, I'm a writer. And, you know,
making that face.
making this very constipated face of pain that was like, it breaks my heart to try to deny it in any way. And I may not be a great writer. I may never be a Toni Morrison writer, but I am a writer, and I have to mark in my territory and claim my space and write my words. So this year, I mean, 7 immersions, 3 facilitation trainings, a book tour, a book, finishing another book. Like, this year was an epic output year, and I feel wrung completely out. Like, I used every ounce of creative energy and life force that I had to move things into the world.
Yeah.
I feel very proud of. I feel proud of the way I showed up personally for several people in my life this year of like, I don't know what to do, but I do know that I can be here.
Yeah.
And
including this bitch right here.
including you, my sister. I'm just like, girl, I will just stand next to you. Let's see what's happening.
Exactly. I will literally stand next to you while we deal with this
Literally
situation.
And the word comes of maelstrom. It's like when other people are in the maelstrom of their lives, what is the skill set it takes to stand next to that? And I feel like I showed up that way in ways that kind of surprised me. And I'm like, I'm pretty selfish, but I'm doing this. You know?
Yeah, so. You had like multiple rescue missions this year.
It was a rescue.
That was really amazing to watch you do it.
I'm gonna have to write about just like literal rescue shit.
Yeah.
And then I fell in love this year, and that also feels like an act of great bravery for someone like me, because I'm so solidly like good on my own, that someone really has to kind of knock me off my feet in a major way.
And someone did.
So, and you know, love has been such a shaper of this decade too, and I feel like I've learned a lot about love, and this feels like the most fun, delightful way that I've been practicing it in a long time. So those are some of my things that I feel good about for this past decade and for this past year. And I'll say the final piece is just, I keep talking about this, but it really is like to pull off what I feel like has been pulled off with Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute feels like a miracle to me.
It's unreal.
That I'm like, I really gathered together like some Emergent Strategy Avengers team. And then I was like, oh wait, like y'all good actually. Like I'm gonna go rest now and actually let y'all formulate.
Yeah, you're like the Tony Stark of the Avengers team, except you're not dead. You're just like taking a break.
I'm just like taking my little Iron Man thing out and being
exactly.
Like, use this. I'm gonna go sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that I don't have to be dead. So, how about you? What do you feel proud of as you reflect on the decade and in this past year?
Well, with the decade, it's so much easier in a way to answer that question than it is to answer the question about the year. Because in some ways it feels like the end of this year is like rushing up to meet me, and I'm sort of like, whoa, like how did a whole last year happen? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Keeping like, what day is it?
Exactly. I'm like, wait, is it actually Saturday? What the fuck? No, it's Sunday. But I feel, and like, I think part of it too is that, like, you know, this year has been a very traumatic year for me, and a lot of the trauma of the year began at this time last year. And so and what's that quote of like the past is not even past.
Yeah.
Or whatever the quote is. You know what I'm talking about?
I thought you were going to say Olaf when I'm older, this will all make sense.
Oh my God, I've totally, when we watched the Frozen 2 movie, I absolutely 100% most identified with Olaf in the Enchanted Forest being like, this will all make sense when I am older.
Exactly. And so I was like, this is fucking scary.
Yeah, this has been like, that's absolutely been like my entire year of being like, someday I will be able to like harvest lessons from this like absolutely ridiculous experience that I am like being subjected to, but right now I can't really quite figure it out. Oh yeah, I think the quote is like, the past is never over. In fact, it's not even past. And and I'm feeling that right now, that like from the perspective of my body, like I'm not beyond the things that have happened yet. Yeah, and so that's something I'm just holding with a lot of tenderness. But I do have things that I feel proud of about this last year, so I'll come back to that. But the easier thing, I think, is like noticing that, like thinking about the conversation I had with Siobhan and being like, oh yeah, June 2010 is when Siobhan was born. And within 2 months of her being born, I moved to rural Minnesota and basically constructed a very different life than I had ever led before. And learned a ton of skills that I did not have prior to moving out into the woods. Yeah. And really like discovered whole other like aspects of myself, and focused so much of my life force around rearing these like 3 brilliant beings. Yes. And so when I look back on the last decade, it, like, even though Finn was born just before this last decade started, Finn was born in 2008, I really see that the thing I'm most proud of the last decade is like my creative work of raising these children.
That's right.
And it's, you know, it is so like no matter what I do in the world, I can just feel so clearly that like it is the most important thing I can be doing is parenting in a way that's like grounded and rooted in like a belief in transformation. I would say one of the things I'm most proud of in the last year is that, and I think I talked about this in a show earlier in the year, but I did manage to produce really quality creative work inside of this year, including that like in some of the worst parts of the maelstrom, I finished a final draft of my book. And novel. I also, my novel, which I feel so proud of, and I love the work that I've created so much, which I know is a big part of, you know, I basically opted at a certain point in the spring to set the work aside so that I could actually protect it from what was happening in my life. And I feel good about the fact that there will come a point soon where I'll actually be able to return to it and fully complete it so that it can live in the world. But I really decided I'm protecting my creative work right now. Right. And I also continued orienting to creative practices throughout the year. And I think that really saved me in a lot of ways. Yeah. The other thing I feel most proud of this year is I was sharing with some of the people who have been in my support crew over the last year that I really survived this last year on friendship and family. And I think the thing I feel most proud of about that is that like I really opened the gate. Like I opened the door and I let people see what was happening, and I allowed myself to be vulnerable with folks in my life, close and intimate folks that I had never allowed myself to be that kind of vulnerable with. Yes. And that was necessary, and I feel so proud of myself for like letting the fortress open. Yes. And being like, here's what's actually happening. That's right. And I need help, you know. That's right. And I can see now that it took so much more courage than I really understood. Yeah. And like, wow, I'm so proud of myself for doing that.
I had to jump on that one too. I'm like, girl, like, both as getting to be part of your support circle and being like, it's so beautiful to get to see a person whole in that way. Mm-hmm. And then I also feel like that's been like one of my major practices. It's actually just relationship, like being like, what does it mean to be a real person in the world, and not my projected self in relationship to other people's projected selves,
right?
And I feel like, the headway that I've made there is so rich, and then it changes everything, right? You know, it changes every interaction.
Right. It literally does. It's like, I've noticed for myself that I have like almost no pretense left in me now.
Yes.
And like circumstances where I would typically go right into performance mode, it's like not even there anymore. I can't pull it off.
Yeah.
Which is, sometimes I wish I could, but like I just can't. But on that tip, I was going to segue into asking you about both like what's ahead for you as a part of the sabbatical. I know some of what you're up to, obviously. But I know that you're about to embark on a really amazing international journey.
That's true.
And but I think what I would be really excited to hear you talk about is your sabbatical boundaries.
Yes, I'm so excited about this. I actually created like a piece that, because I was like, people started asking me all these questions, and I was like, oh, like, you know, and they're wanting to be supportive, right? And I was just like, oh, you want to be supportive of me, but this is not feeling supportive. This is feeling in like you're getting all up in my business, or you want more from me somehow. And one of the things that was really funny,
I just want to know exactly when I can contact you again.
When can I contact you again? And also,
what is the best way to be in touch
who
with
should
you?
I contact instead of you at any point? And it was so funny because I ended up doing an accidental test run, because I said like, oh, it's sabbatical week, and people didn't know whether that meant it was starting or whatever. And there was a flood of messages from people that came in that like, there was like, oh, wait, more. That's how it felt, right? And I was just like,
I just said the word sabbatical.
Like, I don't want to, but then I was like, oh, let me like be clear with people. Like, what is a sabbatical? And it's like, this is a paid leave. It's a time that you take off to explore and to journey and to write or to reflect. And for me, it's really about integration.
Right.
Like, so much has happened, and I've been moving. You know, one of my good friends recently was like, I wish that someone would make a documentary about just the last 3 months of your life and slow it down to the speed of like a year or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, it feels like that. So I made this like sabbatical boundary stuff, and it was like asking for people to send me stuff that's really cool and fun and interesting and like not related to work. And then asking for people to ask me questions about my heart and how I'm doing, but then to understand if I don't want to answer, and to understand that like I have given so much of myself to people, and now most of my sabbatical is about wanting to protect it and claim it back for myself.
Right.
Zach, sorry, the air just came on. Hopefully that doesn't sound too horrible to you. But then I really wanted to be clear to people about what is and isn't work, because I think that is something that people are not clear about, and so they don't understand when they are asking you to do labor.
Totally.
And I'm like, it is labor to ask me to refer you to other people. It's labor to keep asking me how to contact people at my organization when those emails are all over the place. It is labor to ask me to pick my brain. It's labor to ask me to schedule stuff with you. It's labor to ask me to assess what you should do next in your life, since I'm not going to be around to tell you. It is labor to ask me for an interview. Like, it's labor to ask me to teach you something. I'm like, I will offer everything I can generously, but like, these are all the different kinds of labor that particularly I see Black women asked to do for free all the time.
All the time.
And I'm like, it's all good. Like, I offer a lot of this and I don't mind it. But when I'm saying that I need now a break from it, it's just so deep to see how many people, and particularly how many people of privilege, quickly are like, wait, I demand access to you.
Right.
And
right.
So then I realized that like, even people asking me to continue to hold my boundary actively is a kind of labor. And I wanted to like articulate that to people, that I'm like,
wait, say it again.
So it's like if someone's pushing against my boundary over and over again, like even like the number of DMs I get where I'm like, oh shit, now I have to respond to this DM to be like, oh, actually I'm on sabbatical.
Right.
is work,
Right.
Especially when it's like, oh, if there's 20 messages like that a day or 50 messages like that a day, all of a sudden it's like that can be an hour of responding to
Oh
people.
my God, don't
or
respond.
clearing out DMs or whatever
Right,
to be able
right.
to get to the stuff I actually want. So that was a big piece of it. Was also saying, like, don't assume a familiarity that isn't there. Like, don't slide into my DMs to be like, I can get around the boundaries that you've set up.
Oh my God.
So I think that actually speaks to what this next decade is going to be about for me, which is setting boundaries around myself. Now that this level of exposure has happened that was unexpected, being like, okay, how do I now set some containers so that I can still feel very free and abundant and generous with whatever it is I want to bring into the world.
And protect your life force.
But yeah, that I'm like, it's a life force and it's precious to me. So that's one of the things I think I'm up to for this coming year and then for the decade beyond. And then the things that I am calling into existence for this next decade are a real engagement of gifts. So this has been like this breakthrough that I've had, and I just keep feeling into it and saying it, but that like I really have lived my life up until this point as if the best way to exist is to just pick one of my areas of strength and just only focus into that area and kind of feel ashamed if I start doing things in other areas of strength. Like it's like it's egotistical, right? To be like, oh,
I'm also great at this,
a writer,
right?
You know, whatever, or even to try something different, right? And I had this breakthrough. Like, it is not egotistical to live into the gifts that I've been given in my life. It would be egotistical to move into areas where I don't feel any gift and just be like, I'm great at French. And like, no. You know.
Time and time again, she tries and fails.
Exactly. Merci. No. But I think but I was like, it's not actually humble to be in a state of denying what God offered to me. Denying. Which is also one of my gifts, is creating words. So I'm not going to be denying myself anymore.
Never again.
Dialing into denial. So no, I really feel like there's some things that want to come through me, and so far I have not given myself the appropriate space for them. I think I've got musicals in me. I know that I've got fiction in me. I think I might have plays in me. And I'm like, I feel
stage left, stage right.
Exactly. Put on a wig, bitch. I'm giving you some lines. But I just feel excited about creative outpouring, and like being like, facilitation is one area where I have felt confidently strong, and where I have felt very clear, like, oh, I can see how this is an offer to liberation work, but culture, like shaping culture and generating culture and creating culture, feels like another major area where I feel really called to contribute. And where I've seen so much bravery from so many people in my life to be like, oh, culture is a place where you shape change.
Totally.
And I'm like, I believe that. Why don't I let myself practice that shamelessly? So that feels really exciting. I think the other thing is finding the right relationship between home and journeying. Right? Like, I feel like I'm such a nomadic,
finding like balance.
Exactly. But I'm like, I love my nomad self. I want to do a big world tour where I just go around the whole world and talk to people about the ideas that I've been growing. And I'm like, what is the right amount of home that allows for that journeying to feel really rooted?
Right.
And I think I made some headway this year, and then like let it all go. So those feel like the major things that
I remember that you had set out this year with an intention to be home a lot more.
Exactly.
And then by the end of the year, you were like on the road.
Pretty good, right? Like last year, because last year was the year that I started like having plants at home.
That's right.
And that was like the way that I could tell that I was home enough, that I was like, I can keep my plants alive by myself.
Right.
And then this year it got again to the place where I was like, I need someone else to basically be helping me with my plants in exchange for using my laundry. And that's fine, and that's communal, and it's beautiful, and I miss my plant babies.
Right.
And I miss my home, and I love being on the road, and all of that is true. And I think it's probably going to be a lifelong question, but I do think there's something around, like, you know, do I need to create more homes in more places so that home gets to be an experience that I can have in my nomadic self? I'm curious about it, and I don't know what the answers are, but yeah, I feel like those are exciting questions that I'm heading into for the next decade. What about you? What do you feel like you're turning towards and looking forward to bringing into this world?
Well, you know, I feel like I don't think my head is there, frankly.
Like, honestly,
I'm really not. I'm not.
Can you talk about the boring thing?
The boring thing?
Just wanting things to be kind of like...
to
have a boring year.
I'm so excited about this idea. I was talking to a dear friend of mine who has also had a very tumultuous year, and we were just like laughing together about how wonderful it would be to have 6 months of zero transformation and no growth whatsoever, and just have like 6 months where our lives felt like just profoundly boring and nothing was happening beyond the most mundane things. And so that is like one of my intentions for 2020 is to not have to be so attentive to my own growth.
Get bored.
I would like things to get boring. I would love to feel like I could binge watch a television show.
Girl.
Right now, like the way my life has gone over the last year, I haven't had any free time.
You're right.
And I haven't been able to like read or watch TV or do like any normal things that Americans do. And I just am like, when do I get to binge watch an entire TV show over the course of a weekend that I don't have my kids? Like, I want that experience. So, and just I feel like Killing Eve is just like waiting for me. So that is one of my intentions for 2020. But truly, like where I'm at right now is that like my head's not in really the zone of like, what am I looking ahead to or setting intentions around for like the next stretch of my life? I'm more in the zone of like, how do I just like notice what I want?
That's great.
Like right now I'm kind of like, I'm going through a process that feels really good of like exiting several coping mechanisms that are not resilience practices. And I talk about this all the time when I'm teaching about like the difference between resilience practices and coping mechanisms. And I've definitely, they're very different.
Sometimes and they can have like a Venn
sometimes there's a Venn diagram. There is a Venn diagram, but a lot of the things that I've been doing, not a lot. I mean, like I've been super conscientious in some ways over the last year. Like I have, for instance, I had almost no alcohol at all over the last year, with the exception of like a few nights over the holidays recently. But otherwise, I've been like just totally avoiding alcohol consumption. And I was never a like big time alcohol consumer, you know, like I've never been like someone who's like all that into alcohol. But I noticed this year how important it was for me to be sober at all times, basically. And so right now I'm in a process of like letting go of my coping mechanisms.
That's awesome.
And replacing them with actual resilience practices. So like I just quit smoking, which I feel so proud of myself for. I'm like, fuck yes, I did it.
It's so hard.
Well, what's interesting about quitting smoking is that I'm one of those, I always feel like I shouldn't say this out loud.
I think it's important that you do.
Because I think for people who like struggle to quit smoking, they hate to hear this, but I'm one of those people who actually can quit easily.
Oh yeah.
I've never had a hard time like picking up cigarettes for like smoking for a few weeks and then dropping it. But this year was the longest stretch of time in my adult life that I have like smoked continuously. And it was like one of the primary ways that I was coping with getting through the year. And you know, like that, a lot of what goes with that is like when you're parenting, I mean, at least for me, parenting and smoking don't go together. So I was in a constant process of trying to hide the fact that I was doing it from my kids. And So I'm feeling really excited about like letting go of that and replacing it with like the things that my body actually needs right now, because my body just desperately needs to be cared for and to be healthy. So
you deserve that.
I deserve that shit. So that's a big part of like this moment, is just like slowing down, noticing like, oh, what do I actually want in this moment? I would like to sleep, or I would like to read, or I want to slow down and notice my digestion enough to be able to notice whether the food I'm putting into my body is actually feeling good or not.
That's right.
You know, like a lot of what I perceive the next year being about is like exiting some of the just like hypervigilance that I've been in, and really trying to ground into like a sense that like I'm not actually under threat right now. I can relax. I can, my gaze can be like more wider, like 180 instead of like 45 degrees.
That's great.
You know? That's so great. that feels like that's all I need to think about at the moment.
It's making me think, there's this meme, I may have mentioned it to you, or I may even mentioned it to the podcast before, but it keeps coming up to me, which is like, it's like someone just looking desperate and just being like, God, I've had, I don't need any more things that make you stronger. But don't kill you. I'm good. Like, I'm as strong as I would like to be currently.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
And
That's
I keep thinking of that, where I'm just like, I'm good. My cup, like...
My cup runneth over.
Some part of me is really full. And I need to pour out a little bit and, like, process what's in here.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, like, I look at my life and I'm like, I've been wishing for things to get easier for many years.
Yes.
And they haven't gotten easier. Yeah. And I recognize that, like, I learned a lot more this past year about my astrological signature and what that has to do with some of what's going on in my life currently, and some of what I will probably likely always be dealing with.
Some Pluto stuff.
I have some really, really intense stuff in my chart.
Yeah.
And I have a very strange and unique signature.
Yeah.
And the more I've learned about it, the more I'm sort of like, okay, it makes sense. Perhaps it is going to be the case for some time that I will experience a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
And it might be good for me to figure out how to stop wishing for ease all the time, because it may not come, at least not in the next couple of years. And so that's another thing that I'm kind of thinking about, like, even as I set this intention for boring, I'm like, it might not be boring for a while.
Well, it is so interesting just at a base level of a Sag life, just like Sag is about change. It's like,
and
how we know when things start to settle, you're like, what needs to shift?
Right. And that's like, and that's I think as I've talked to I think I've shared this with our listeners before, that I am a Sagittarius like times 5, because I have 5 planets in Sagittarius in my natal chart. So I've got the planet of change, Jupiter, ruled by Sagittarius, or the ruler of Sagittarius in Sagittarius, alongside my sun, Mercury, Uranus, and Neptune. So, and Uranus and Neptune are also about change and dissolving.
Exactly.
And so, like, there's a lot, and our whole generation is about change and dissolving. So, like, there's a lot going on and I think I just need to, there's some level of acceptance that I need to reach about the fact that, like, I might be in a lot of instability for a long time.
Well, but I have to say, I feel like this is one of the, like, when I think about, like, what have I been harvesting this year? And even, like, how did I make it through this year? Because I did more things than was actually possible to do
in the time that you had.
In the time that I had. But part of it was some acceptance of, like, let me fully accept what I'm capable of and how I am. And both positive and negative sides of that. So I had this year of being like, I'm not a manager of people, so I'm not going to try to do that. I'm not capable of it. I won't do it. And I'm going to just release mostly what comes from not doing that, right? Like, right? Like, I was just sort of like, I'm not managing. That's not happening. Something else is happening. Accept it. And where the places where I struggled were where I resisted the truth of who I am and how I am. And the places where I excelled were when I accepted and was like, someone else needs to do this piece, or actually I can do that even though everyone else thinks it's totally not doable, or whatever it is. And that acceptance led to the stability inside myself that was really unexpected. And so in these moments of what I think could look chaotic, I felt very peaceful. And then the times when I didn't feel peaceful were when I was wrestling against what was coming and what was meant to be or how I meant to be. And I feel like that's the thing I want to continue. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not, I know this sounds great. The big lesson, I'm not in control of other people.
Yeah.
Like, I really am not in control of other people.
Right.
Accepting that has been so liberating. Like, I'm just like, oh, a lot of my chaos comes from trying to fix and control everyone else.
Right.
And I can't.
Right.
So letting go of that, there's something so spacious. I'm like, if I only have to really hold it down for like me, and then what I'm responsible for is just communicating as best I can to other people about what is impacting me and how I am, it's much more doable.
Totally.
So I want to say I'm heading on this sabbatical, and I look forward to our return conversation in 6 months. And I wish for you some boredom, and I wish for myself some integration.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what actually happens for us.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sabbaticals also often are a time of breakdown, and I might just be crying all over the world.
Yeah.
That's also cool with me, right?
As Olaf would say, I don't know what transformation means, but I'm excited to see what happens for each one of us.
It's going to be so interesting. I have to say Frozen 2 is the highlight of this decade. Now, we are going into this period, but we're not taking a break from the podcast. So we're going to do our normal break around this, which will be about a couple months of time off. But you and Zach are going to be cooking up something that I really want to make sure the listeners get to hear.
Exciting. So which
they may have been waiting for 3 seasons.
Exactly. So yes, as anyone who's like a longtime listener of the show and has been with us from the beginning will know, we've talked since the inception of the show about doing episodes that are kind of more oriented towards like the hard skills of survival in apocalyptic and disaster conditions. And then beyond the hard skills, some of the more intense and hard conversations that we need to be having within our communities about the issues we are likely to face under apocalyptic conditions. And so what we've decided to do is take this time when the show comes back for season 4 in the spring, which will be around, we'll come back around March 2020.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing an apocalypse survival mini-series that's going to be focused on a series of topics that are related to both those harder skills and harder conversations. So we're going to be talking about access to water. We're going to be talking about rehabilitation of land and food access and cultural food recovery projects around the U.S. that are really looking at like what is a holistic approach to food access under apocalyptic conditions. We're going to be talking about the really controversial subject of arming and disarming, and like the question of how we protect ourselves in apocalyptic circumstances. We're going to be talking about the internet after apocalypse, you know, like what is going to be our relationship to technology, and particularly digital technologies under those conditions.
Get your somatics together.
Exactly. It's like we're all basically going to have to learn ESP. But so there's a whole bunch of, we're going to talk about raising apocalypse ready kids. There's a whole bunch of things that we're going to be talking about over the course of this mini-series. And we're really excited because another really dear friend of ours who's an activist and producer, writer, and just brilliant person all around, our friend Kat, is also going to be producing a podcast that's that's similarly focused around the same time. So we're going to be cross-posting episodes. We're going to be doing a lot of related content. So our goal here is to focus the first half of season 4 on like a more kind of like direct learning experience around apocalyptic conditions. And then Adrian will come back to us for the second half of the 2020 season. But we're hoping, then we'll go back into talking about feelings and everyone gets to be excited about that. Our hope is that we will also get some missives from Adrian while she's on the road.
I'm bringing my recording equipment.
Adrian's bringing her recording equipment. We hope that we can get some Easter eggs from Adrian because we know how important they are to her, to all of us. I'm
going to be dropping eggs.
You'll be dropping eggs all over the world. Exactly. So, so we'll we're going to keep integrating, but I'm really, really excited about this little
Me too.
mini journey that we're going to go on through some of these really, I think, what can be very troubling waters, but are also really important parts of the subject for us to tackle.
Well, and I'm really excited because I feel like it might change the whole show. I think that this is something we've been longing for.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something that listeners have been longing for. And we know, so many people in our community know.
Oh my God, we have such a wealth of resource in our movement communities on these subjects. Because as we always say, any issue that we're facing, there's already people who are coming up with solutions to that issue, right? That's one of the principles of the movement building work that you and I do, and that the people that we're in relationship with do. And that's one of the things that's so exciting about this is that we're going to get to uplift all of the incredible work that people all over the country are already doing around exactly these questions.
I'm excited to listen.
Yeah.
I love you so much.
I love you too. I'm going to miss you.
I'm going to miss you too. And I'm excited for this. This feels like a good step for us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be bomb. Everything.
It's going to be bloom.
It's going to be bomb. And then it's going to bloom like flowers in the aftermath of war.
On that note, that's what we should have called this podcast. Flowers in the
aftermath of war.
How could my body betray me thus?
That's the title of the episode. How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the beloved Zach Rosen.
You can become a supporter, like a donor patron of our work by going to patreon.com/IntoTheWorldShow and give us resources that help us to produce the show.
And will help us produce the mini-series especially. So now is a really good time to give. How to Survive the End of the World is on Facebook and Instagram at End of the World Show.
Oh, yeah.
And Twitter. We're also on Twitter, but I don't remember what our handle is. End of the World PC.
End of the World PC.
That's right.
And music for today's show is going to come from Mother Cyborg and Tunde Olaniran.
Wow.
Who've been with us this whole time.
So good.
Such magical humans.
I'm amazed that we did our outro credits and we still figured out how to get all... I think that's the first time that we've done it out of order, but it still works.
It worked. And from the Easter egg...
You're like, I had one teed up all this time,
I literally feel like Mairead when I do this. And also the thing I said I wanted is if you were to pick favorite artist and a favorite movie from this past decade.
From this past decade? Come on.
Is that too hard?
That's too
past
hard.
year.
Past year. Okay. Favorite artist from this past year... do you want to go first so I have time?
Well,
because I suspect that you have something teed up in your brain.
Do you know what's so interesting is, so
I'm listening to you, but I'm also thinking at the same time of what my option is going to be.
I don't know that it's. I think I could only do it for this past week.
Ooh,
do you know what I'm saying?
Happened?
I'm just sort of I've just been I've been reading nonstop. Basically, already the main part of my sabbatical has been that I've just been reading. I've read 7 books or something so far, and I read finally, after years of wanting to, the short story collection Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang.
Oh, yeah.
And I was literally like gasping the whole time I was reading, just like, what
So
a
good.
big, beautiful brain. And when I think about several of my favorite pieces of art or other magic from this past decade, his work influenced it or was directly related to it. You know, the movie Arrival. Like, there's just like stuff that I'm like, ooh.
That's right. His short story. He wrote a short story that Arrival is based on, right? I love that movie.
And then there's other stories that he wrote that I'm like, oh, that showed up too. Whether it was his idea or just that idea came out in other ways. And then I want to say this last 3 Star Wars movies all together. Like, we just saw the final one, and I think these last 3, that has been some of my favorite movie content of this past period of time. That I'm like, these movies, like we are rewatching them, and I'm just like, they're really beautiful and really powerful and give you a lot to think about and talk about and sit with and be with and wrestle with. And you know, really thinking about what does it mean for me. You know, I keep thinking about like, what does it mean to engage something as massive as the Force and to understand that everyone can access it.
Yeah.
And some people have a lineage of access to it and others don't. And no matter which lineage you have, you ultimately have to make a choice at some point of which side you're going to serve.
Right.
Are you going to serve the status quo, which moves us towards dominance and control culture, or are you going to move away from that? And are you going to be part of a rebellious force that continues to move life and magic and connection and, you know, like life in the planetary sense? Like, how are we connected to place and caring for place versus destroying place?
Totally.
So those would be my choices.
Those are good choices.
Thanks.
Those are good choices. I feel like artist of the decade for me is Kehinde Wiley.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I feel like
Brilliante.
Exactly. Like, his work is just so stunning and and just like profoundly like revolutionary in my mind, in the way that particularly the way he creates like very large pieces of artwork, like the way he takes up enormous physical space with black bodies and really surrounded by gorgeousness. Has been very profound and healing for me. I think with movies, gosh, that's a really, really hard but good one. I think for me also, I can answer this of the decade. I feel like Moonlight is the movie of the decade for me. I feel like in part because, and this is going to sound so like, maybe like tender and corny, but there's a scene in Moonlight towards the end, once he's reunited as an adult with this boy that he like fell in love with and as a high school student. They're in the restaurant, and the other man, the man who like I think runs or works at the restaurant, turns on the jukebox.
Yes.
And the song that starts playing is Hello Stranger.
Hello, stranger.
And that is one of my all-time favorite songs from my childhood.
Ours.
And I hadn't heard it in ours. I hadn't heard it in I hadn't heard the song in probably over a decade. And so when it came on in the movie, I just started weeping.
Yes.
And it's very rare for me to have that level of a physical response to a film.
Yes.
To be filled with that kind of nostalgia.
Yeah.
It was like watching a film that I've watched my whole life, you know? So that was really cool. And that, I feel like that film has really stayed with me.
I love that.
Good
Even
Easter
though
egg
I
question.
do cry at almost every movie I see.
Yeah.
I cry harder than Frozen 2.
I mean, I cried during Frozen 2 as well but it was the tears of liberation. It was just she's so free and she's discovering herself and she really knows who she is.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I also feel like if it had been a week later from now, I probably would have a hard cry about something else. I just am
just crying all the time.
I also want to give a decade-long shout-out to Kimberly Drew and Taylor Aldridge and the whole Arts Black crew and the folks who've been uplifting Black art for this past decade, because I feel like they've changed the whole landscape for someone like me who I'm not in the art world going to the museum all the time, but they make sure that I know and see and
You're
love.
not going to the museum all the time? Girl, you got to go to the museum.
I'm gonna change my life.
Change your life.
That's my Easter egg.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
Good night.